The rain was falling softly that evening, the kind of steady drizzle that seemed to carry sadness in its rhythm. The cemetery was almost empty, save for a man standing before a gravestone, his expensive suit drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, but he did not care. His name was Daniel, a man known in the world as a powerful CEO, a figure of wealth and success, someone who had climbed the ladder of ambition to the very top. Yet in this place, standing before the name etched in stone, he was not a CEO. He was simply a grieving husband, broken and hollow, with nothing left inside him but pain. His wife Anna had been his reason for living, his anchor in the chaos of life. Without her, everything was meaningless. The grand offices, the bank accounts, the boardroom applause, all of it was nothing but noise without the sound of her laughter waiting at home. He traced her name on the cold marble with trembling fingers, whispering words so faint the wind almost carried them away. "I can't go on, Anna. I can't." His voice cracked as the weight of those words sank into the night. He had hidden it from the world, kept the mask of strength on his face while his soul was crumbling, but here at her grave he could not pretend any more. He reached into his coat pocket, fingers closing around the object he had carried with him all day. It was a small bottle of pills, his escape, his plan to end the unbearable emptiness. For weeks he had battled with this thought, but tonight, with the rain falling and the loneliness pressing down on him, he was ready to let go. But just as he was about to take the step he had convinced himself was the only way out, he felt it, an unexpected weight, a hand on his shoulder. It startled him because he had been certain he was alone. He turned quickly, anger and despair flashing in his eyes, but what he saw was not threatening. It was an old man, his clothes simple, his umbrella tilted so that it shielded Daniel from the rain. His face was lined with age and hardship, but his eyes carried a gentleness that Daniel hadn't seen in a long time. "Please," Daniel muttered, his voice raw, "leave me alone." But the man didn't. He just stood quietly, sharing the umbrella, letting the rain ease off Daniel's face. His silence was not invasive. It was steady, almost comforting. After a long pause, the man finally spoke, his voice calm and kind. No one should cry alone in the rain. Those words, so simple, cut through Daniel's despair. He wanted to shout at him, to tell him to mind his own business, but instead, something inside him broke open. For the first time in months, Daniel began to speak. He told this stranger about Anna, about how she had been the love of his life, about her kindness, the way she always found beauty in the ordinary, how she would dance barefoot in their kitchen, how she had believed in him even when he doubted himself. His words tumbled out like a flood he could no longer contain. The stranger said nothing, only listened, nodding now and then, his presence like a steady anchor in the storm of Daniel's grief. Finally, Daniel pulled the bottle of pills from his pocket and whispered, "I was going to end it tonight. I can't live without her." His hand shook as he revealed his secret, the very thing he had hidden from everyone else. The man's hand tightened gently on his shoulder. His eyes were heavy with understanding, not judgment. "I know," he said softly, "I lost my wife too." Daniel froze. For a moment, he felt like he was staring into a mirror of his own pain. The man continued, "I wanted to leave this world the day she left me. I thought I couldn't breathe another day without her. But then I realized something. Our love doesn't end when their life does. Carrying on isn't betrayal. It's the greatest way we honor them." Those words pierced Daniel's heart in a way nothing else had. For months, he had convinced himself that life without Anna was pointless, that his grief was unique and unbearable. Yet here stood a man who had walked the same valley of shadows and still found a way to stand. He wasn't offering empty comfort. He was speaking from the very same wound Daniel carried. The rain began to lighten, the clouds parting slightly, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt the faintest hint of something he thought he had lost forever: hope. He dropped the bottle of pills into the wet grass, tears streaming down his face, not of despair this time, but of release. In the days that followed, Daniel and the stranger, whose name was Samuel, began to meet again. Sometimes they would sit together at the cemetery in silence. Sometimes they would talk about their wives, about the good memories and the hard days. Samuel showed Daniel that grief didn't have to consume him forever, that love could continue in the way they lived, in the kindness they shared, in the lives they touched. Little by little, Daniel began to change. He started visiting the hospital where Anna had been treated, not just writing checks, but sitting with patients, listening to their fears, holding the hands of those who felt alone. He created programs for widows, scholarships for children who had lost their parents. For the first time since Anna's passing, he wasn't just existing. He was living with purpose again. One evening years later, Daniel returned to Anna's grave. He brought fresh flowers and knelt by the stone, his heart still heavy with love, but no longer crushed by despair. He whispered, "I miss you every single day, but I've learned to live for you, Anna, to carry your love forward." As the sun broke through the clouds, warming his face, Daniel smiled, a small, genuine smile that carried both sorrow and peace. And in that moment, he understood the truth Samuel had given him. Even the smallest act of kindness, like a stranger's touch or a listening ear, can stop someone from giving up. It can change the course of a life entirely. So if you are hearing this now, remember that your pain, no matter how deep, does not have to end your story. Sometimes hope comes in the form of a stranger, a gentle word, or a silent presence that reminds you that you are not alone. And sometimes it is your kindness that becomes the very lifeline someone else is waiting for. Because in the end, it's never the grand gestures or the riches that save us. It's the small moments of grace, the quiet acts of compassion, the touch of one human soul reaching out to another. That is how lives are saved. That is how faith in humanity is restored. And that is how love, even after death, continues to live on. The night was cold, and the air carried the kind of stillness that seems to weigh on a person's chest. In a quiet corner of the cemetery, Daniel knelt before a gravestone that bore the name of the woman who had been his everything, his wife, Anna. He was not the man the world thought him to be tonight. To the newspapers, he was a successful CEO, a man who had everything anyone could dream of: wealth, influence, power, but none of that mattered. Not the tall glass towers of his empire, not the expensive cars parked in his garage, not the applause of shareholders or the respect of rivals. All of it was meaningless without her. The woman who had once made life vibrant, who had given meaning to his ambition, was gone. Daniel pressed his trembling hand against the cold stone, whispering words into the darkness. "I don't know how to keep going, Anna. Every day without you feels like an eternity. I try to work, I try to smile in front of people, but inside I am falling apart." His voice cracked, and tears rolled down his face. "I just want to be with you again." Since her passing, grief had wrapped itself around him like chains. He carried it through board meetings, through dinners, through nights when he lay awake staring at the ceiling of their vast bedroom, waiting for a voice that would never answer back. He had thought money could solve everything, but no amount of wealth could bring back the woman who had been the center of his world. And as he knelt there, the weight of his loss pressing into his very bones, he felt something break inside him. He had come here with the intention of ending the pain once and for all. In his pocket, he carried the answer to his torment, a small bottle of pills. Tonight, he thought, he would join her. But before he could take that irreversible step, he felt something unexpected, a hand resting gently on his shoulder. He startled, spinning around, his heart racing. Standing behind him was an older man, his face lined with age, his clothes simple, holding an umbrella that shielded them both from the drizzle that had begun to fall. His eyes were soft, filled with something Daniel hadn't seen in anyone's gaze for months: understanding. "Please," Daniel muttered, his voice hoarse, "leave me alone." The old man didn't move. He just stood there, silent but steady, his umbrella tilted so the rain no longer fell on Daniel's bowed head. After a moment he spoke, his tone calm and gentle. "No one should grieve alone in the rain." Daniel wanted to push him away, to scream at him for interrupting what was supposed to be his final goodbye. But instead, he found himself breaking open. The words came out of him like a flood. He told the stranger about Anne, about her laugh, about the little notes she used to hide in his briefcase, reminding him to eat, about how she had a way of bringing joy into the most ordinary of moments. He confessed how empty the house felt without her, how success had turned to dust in her absence. And then, almost in a whisper, Daniel revealed his secret. He pulled the bottle of pills from his pocket, holding it in his shaking hand. "I was going to take these tonight. I can't do this anymore. I can't live without her." The man's eyes softened even more, and his grip on Daniel's shoulder grew firm, steady. "I know," he said quietly. "I lost my wife too." Daniel froze. For a moment, it felt like he was looking into a mirror of his own pain. The man continued, his voice breaking but strong. "When she died, I wanted to leave this world with her. I thought life without her wasn't worth living. But then I realized something. Grief does not have to be the end. Carrying on, living with the love they gave us, helping others through their pain, that is the most powerful way to honor them." Those words hit Daniel like a wave. For months, he had believed that holding on to his grief was the only way to keep Anna close, that letting go or moving forward would mean betraying her memory. But here was someone who had walked through the same valley of shadows, who had faced the same suffocating loneliness, and yet had chosen to live, not only live, but to help others. It was not betrayal, it was the truest form of love. Daniel dropped the bottle into the wet grass, his hands covering his face as sobs racked his body. The stranger didn't try to stop his tears. He simply stood with him, steady as the rain, his presence reminding Daniel that he was not alone. In the days that followed, Daniel and the man, whose name was Samuel, began to see each other more often. They met at the cemetery sometimes at a nearby cafe. Samuel shared pieces of his own journey, how he had once been consumed by despair, how he had wanted to give up, and how slowly, painfully, he had learned to live again. He told Daniel how he had started volunteering at community centers, visiting hospitals, simply being there for people who were grieving as he had. "Every time I help someone," Samuel said, "I feel like I am carrying a piece of her love forward. She's gone, but through me, her kindness still lives." Those words planted a seed in Daniel's heart. He had spent months drowning in the thought of what he had lost, but now he began to wonder, what if Anna's love could still live on through him? What if he could take his grief and turn it into something that healed others? So Daniel began to change. At first it was small. He started visiting the hospital where Anna had been treated. Instead of just donating money, he sat with patients who had no family to visit them. He listened to their fears, held their hands, and simply stayed with them through the silence. And every time he did, he felt Anna close to him, as if she was smiling at him, proud of the man he was becoming. From there, Daniel expanded his efforts. He created a foundation in Anna's name, providing scholarships for children who had lost their parents too soon. He funded support groups for widows and widowers, creating spaces where people could grieve together rather than alone. His business empire, once only a monument to his ambition, became a platform to serve. The emptiness inside him did not disappear overnight, but with every act of kindness, with every hand he held, he felt less alone, and he felt Anna's memory shining brighter. Years later, Daniel returned to the cemetery, but this time not in despair. He carried fresh flowers and knelt by Anna's grave, his heart still heavy with love, but no longer crushed by grief. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I miss you every single day, Anna. That will never change. But I've learned that grief does not have to be the end. I've learned to live for you, to carry your love into this world through what I do." The clouds parted and sunlight fell on his face, warm and gentle. He smiled, not the forced smile of a man pretending to be strong, but the true smile of a man who had finally found peace. And in that moment, Daniel understood fully what Samuel had given him that night in the rain. grief is not the closing of a book. It is a chapter that becomes part of us, shaping us, pushing us to live with deeper love and compassion. To carry on is not to forget. It is to honor, in the most powerful way possible, the memory of those we have lost. So if you are hearing this story now, remember that your grief, no matter how unbearable it feels, does not have to be the end of your story. You can carry on. You can take the love you were given and pour it into others, turning your pain into a source of light for someone else. And in doing so, you will discover that love never truly dies. It lives on, in every act of kindness, in every life touched, in every soul comforted. Because the greatest way to honor the memory of the ones we love is not to give up when they are gone, but to keep living, to keep loving, and to let their legacy shine through us.